Do you ever look at a jazz chart and feel like the freedom in your improvisation is going to be hampered by the fact there's so many chord changes? Well, today's lesson is about trying to simplify your thinking and to stop chasing chords. I'll show you two methods that can work for this approach. Now, if you're new here, please consider subscribing for jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and Saturday. And now let's get straight onto these methods. Method 1, bye-bye 2. One of the easiest ways to make things simpler is just to ignore the 2 chord and just play the 5. And what I mean by that is every time you see a 2-5-1, like D minor 7, G7, C major 7, when you're soloing over it, you're just going to think G7 to C major 7. So you're not going to think like D minor 7 arpeggio or D Dorian, G7 arpeggio or G Mixolydian, then C major. You're just going to think G7 to C. Now the 2-5-1 is often heralded as the most important progression in jazz. It's so prevalent, so prominent in songs. Now, whilst it's a very common thing and it's a way that songs typically move around, the 5 really is more important than the 2. The 5 has the function of taking you back to 1. So, in terms of hierarchy of the chords, 5 is more important than 2. One of the reasons this works is because they do actually share 2 notes, the 2 and the 5 chord. D minor 7 and G7 both contain the notes D and F. So it's not such a big departure really when you just think 5 over the 2. Let me show you how I do this. So let's take a song with lots of 2-5s. So let's take the A section to Satin Doll, which goes D minor 7 to G7, 2-5 in C, then it goes 2-5 in D, E minor to A7, then it does a minor 2-5, A minor 7 flat 5 to G7, then it does a 2-5 in G flat, but it goes to C major, E minor 7 flat 5, sometimes people play B flat 7 there, then A7. So that would be the changes, and as you can see there's a lot of 2 and 5 happening. Now, let's imagine I didn't simplify it and I'm thinking, oh, that's a change every 2 beats until you hit the C major 7, and I'd have to chase kind of every chord if you like. So if I was playing over the chords which I've got going here on my looper, I would be thinking of the arpeggios or scales to fit each chord, so something like this. Something like that. And yeah, there's a lot going through my head when I'm thinking that. I'm thinking, oh, right, we're moving to that chord, I need DFAC for D minor 7, changes to G7, I need GBDF, plus other things, chromatics or scales to include. There's a lot going on in my head. If we simplify it, and I'll put it on the screen, instead of thinking D minor 7 to G7, we'd ignore the 2, and we just think G7 for that bit. When it goes to E minor 7 and A7, take out the E minor 7, just think A7. When it goes to A minor 7 flat 5 to D7, just think D7. When it goes to A flat minor to D flat 7, just think D flat 7, C major, and then ignore the 2 here and just go to A7. Now, let me just demonstrate going for the arpeggios of just the 5. I'm not really sort of playing a solo here, but just so you can hear the arpeggios. So G7, A7, D7, D flat, 7, C major 7, then A7, and back. As you can hear there, it didn't really miss the 2 chord, and I wasn't having to go where I'm playing 2, then 5. Now let me try and solo where I just think in terms of 5 and not 2. So forth. So for me, that approach is much easier than the way I first played it when I was going for the 2 every time. It's not to say I always do this, but it's just one way that can make your life easier, and certainly when you're getting to grips with improvising over tunes and you just want to declutter things. So, our chart would look like, when our chart wants to look like this, mentally in my head I'm imagining this, and there's loads less chords, and that's a hell of a lot easier to play over. So just a big takeaway from this is you don't have to chase every chord. Some chords are more important than others. There's a hierarchy. Some chords are so similar, like say for instance if you go C major 7 to A minor 7, yes they're 2 different sounds, there's a lot of shared notes there, so you can, just think C major over both, or you could think A minor over both, and it would sound fine. Whereas if it was to A flat minor, that's obviously a very different sound, and it's not going to work. It comes back to learning the notes in your chords and recognising similarities between things, where you can afford to miss things out. But the takeaway here is, you got a 2-5-1, just play 5-1. If Satin Doll's a favourite of yours, then check out my solo guitar arrangement of that on my website. Method 2, play by key centre. This method relies upon your ability to recognise what key you are in at any point in the song. So for this, we're going to take the first section of I Can't Give You Anything But Love. We're in the key of G, and these are the chords. Back for the second time through. If we look at the key signature there on the chart, we've got 1 sharp, which means the key of G major. Now, if we just analyse the chords there, the chords in the key of G are G, G6 or G major 7, A minor, A minor 7, B minor, B minor 7, C major 7 or C6, D dominant 7th, E minor, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7, flat 5, and back to a G. So if we just look at the chords there, well, a lot of them are in key. We've got G, we've got A minor, we've got D7, we've got C major. The A7 is out of key, and so is the D minor 7, and so is the G7. So there we've seen what chords are in key. Now, looking at the first 2 lines, it's all pretty much in G. There's just that B flat diminished chord there. There. Now that's so fleeting, I wouldn't bother chasing it. So the whole first 2 lines, I just thought, right, it's all in G major. So I just try and create phrases with my G major scale. I know, a vanilla choice, but it works. And it will sound fine over those chords, and we won't bother worrying about the B flat diminished. When we look at the third line though, we get the out of key, D minor 7, G7, C major 7, 2-5-1 in the key of C. So what can we do there? Play by key centre. Instead of thinking 2-5-1, we can just think, right, that whole bit is in C major. So I can just play C major, a C major scale over that bit. So for the first 2 lines, G major. Third line, I'm going to think C major. When this A7 comes in, that's a chord out of key. So I would just go for an A7 arpeggio. You could use a Mixolydian as well, but A7 arpeggio over that. We then get the 2 and the 5 of G to come back, A minor 7, D7. So we can think back to our G major scale, play by key centre. Or if you're thinking arpeggios, do what we did a minute ago, just play D7, ditch the 2. So let's try soloing just thinking about key centre. This way I can fall more easily into the sort of easy call and response phrasing. C major. A7. G major. Rather than having to think G major, B flat, diminish, A minor 7, D7, I'm just thinking, right, I've got this G major scale, what phrase can I create with it? Might add the odd chromatic. C major, A7, just an A7 arpeggio, back to G major, back to G. So my thinking is a lot more simplified, and I'm able to think of phrases. Melodic phrases are much more than trying to chase every note of every chord. You're going to find a lot easier if you're, relatively new to improvising, if it's just like, right, those 2 lines, G major scale, but try and say something with it. Try and play phrases. Don't just, run the scale up and down. Try and play something melodic. Da 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 da. Something you could sing, something you could remember. And ultimately, you do that. You play different each time rather than trying to just wheel out the licks. So we've got G major 2 lines, C major 1 line, A7 back to G major. So we just reduced our thinking a fair bit to make your life easier. We've got my 2 methods there. Method 1 where we just ignore chord 5. Method 2 where we play by key center and go like, right, that whole section is in that key, I can just use the major scale over that bit, or the minor scale, depending on what sort of song you're playing over. And this is just reducing the harmony to the bare bones, the absolute essentials, really. Try both methods over other songs, and I think you'll find it liberating, and it will just free up, you know, your thinking, so you can play music rather than, what chord, what notes do I need? There's so much going on through your head.